You activate your good gut bacteria every time you do this. The human gut has over 100 trillion microorganisms. That number's so large it's hard to process. To give you an idea, there are more bacteria inside your body than stars visible to the naked eye in the entire sky. And these bacteria don't sit still. They work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, producing substances that your blood absorbs and distributes to every cell in your body. They regulate inflammation. They control how your immune system responds. They directly influence cortisol levels, which is the stress hormone. They participate in serotonin production, which is the well-being hormone. Almost 95% of all the serotonin in your body is produced in the gut, not in the brain. So when your gut is out of balance, it's not just digestion that suffers. Your mental health declines. Your immune system weakens. Chronic inflammation increases. And it's exactly chronic inflammation that's behind the diseases that kill the most people today. Type 2 diabetes, high blood pressure, cardiovascular disease, some types of cancer. But what most people don't know is that this imbalance has a name. Researchers call it dysbiosis. And silent dysbiosis is one of the most common conditions in the modern world, and one of the most ignored. Silent because it doesn't hurt. It doesn't show up on a routine blood test. It works underneath the surface, degrading your health over years until one day the body presents the final result. And here comes the part that changes the thinking of everyone watching this video. The science of the microbiome has made an enormous leap in the last 10 years. And what researchers discovered is not that some bacteria are good and others are bad in a simplified sense. What they discovered is that bacterial diversity is what defines gut health. People with a healthy gut have hundreds of different species of bacteria living in balance. Sick people, people who age faster, people with chronic inflammation have an impoverished microbiome, few species, low diversity, and then comes the question nobody asks at the right moment: what is killing this bacterial diversity? The answer goes beyond what you've already heard about antibiotics. Yes, antibiotics destroy the microbiome. But what most people don't connect is that refined sugar is one of the greatest destroyers of bacterial diversity that exists. Refined sugar preferentially feeds a specific group of pathogenic bacteria, bacteria that produce inflammatory byproducts. This group proliferates, takes up space, and suffocates the beneficial bacteria that need completely different conditions to survive. Chronic stress does the same thing through a different path. Elevated cortisol alters the intestinal pH, modifies motility, and creates a hostile environment for beneficial bacteria. People who live under constant pressure have more impoverished microbiomes than people who manage stress well, regardless of diet. Lack of sleep is another factor that very few people connect to gut health. The microbiome has a circadian rhythm, just like humans do. When you break the sleep cycle, you break the rhythm of the bacteria. They can't carry out the processes they normally perform at night, and the gut wakes up imbalanced. Comment below if you identify with any of these factors. Stress, poor sleep, too much sugar. I want to know how many people are living with a silently overloaded gut. Now comes the point that is the heart of this video, and that will make sense with everything you've seen so far. There is a mechanism called the gut immunity longevity axis. This mechanism works like this. When the gut has high bacterial diversity and beneficial bacteria are present in adequate amounts, they produce substances called short-chain fatty acids. The main one is called butyrate. Butyrate is a substance that acts directly on the cells lining the intestinal wall, maintaining the integrity of the gut barrier. An intact intestinal wall means that toxins, bacterial fragments, and food particles don't pass into the bloodstream. When this barrier breaks down, what researchers call increased intestinal permeability occurs, and then particles that should never be in the bloodstream enter it. The immune system goes on permanent alert. This generates chronic systemic inflammation, and chronic systemic inflammation accelerates cellular aging in a process that biologists call inflammaging, which is the combination of inflammation and aging. Studies with centenarians consistently show that people who reach 90, 95, 100 years in good health have low inflammatory markers. They don't share a universal special diet. They don't practice the same type of exercise. They don't have the same medical history. What they have in common is the absence of chronic inflammation, and a substantial part of that is related to gut microbiome health. This means that taking care of your gut is not an aesthetic practice, it's not a wellness trend. It's one of the most fundamental longevity strategies that science has identified to date. Write in the comments. Did you already know that the gut played this role in aging? I want to know. Now I'm going to talk about 3 foods that have solid scientific evidence for activating and feeding the beneficial bacteria in the gut. These are not foods that everyone talks about. There's a detail in each one that people ignore, and that makes all the difference in effectiveness. The first is green banana biomass, not the ripe banana. The green banana. The difference is resistant starch. When a banana ripens, the resistant starch converts into simple sugars. Green banana has an extremely high concentration of resistant starch, which is a type of fiber that passes through the small intestine without being digested and arrives in the large intestine intact. There, the beneficial bacteria, especially bifidobacteria, ferment this starch and produce the butyrate I mentioned earlier. The butyrate that strengthens the intestinal wall, the detail most people miss. Cooking the biomass does not eliminate the resistant starch. But cooking the banana and then cooling it actually increases the concentration of resistant starch even further, because cooling reorganizes the molecular structure of the starch. The second food is kefir, but there's a detail almost nobody talks about. The industrial kefir you find in most supermarkets has gone through processes that drastically reduce microbial diversity. Kefir made with authentic kefir grains has between 30 and 50 species of beneficial bacteria and yeasts. Industrialized kefir usually has between 2 and 5 artificially added strains. That difference is enormous. Grain kefir has a gut colonization capacity that the industrialized version simply doesn't have. On top of that, kefir fermentation produces lactic acid, acetic acid, and CO2, which create an environment that makes it harder for pathogenic bacteria to grow. Kefir is not just a probiotic, it's a gut environment modulator. The third food is raw chicory or chicory root extract. Chicory has the highest concentration of inulin among all foods. Inulin is a prebiotic fiber, meaning it's not a bacterium, but it's the preferred food of the gut's beneficial bacteria, especially those of the Lactobacillus and Bifidobacterium genus. The inulin in chicory has a special characteristic. It ferments selectively, meaning it specifically favors beneficial bacteria without proportionally feeding the pathogenic ones. The bifidogenic effect of chicory inulin is one of the most studied areas in intestinal nutrition. The important detail: intense cooking degrades inulin. To preserve the prebiotic effect, chicory should be consumed raw, lightly sautéed, or as an extract. 3 foods with different mechanisms. Green banana biomass stimulates butyrate production. Grain kefir increases microbial diversity and improves the gut environment. Chicory preferentially feeds the most beneficial strains of the microbiome. When these 3 are consistently incorporated into your diet, the gut begins to respond within weeks. Systemic inflammation drops. The immune system stabilizes. Energy improves. Sleep improves because a regulated microbiome produces more melatonin precursors. And in the long term, what science points to is that a diversified and balanced microbiome is associated with longer telomeres. Telomeres are the protective ends of chromosomes, and telomere length is one of the most reliable biological markers of aging that exists. The longer the telomeres, the longer cells can divide in a healthy way. Taking care of your gut is, in practice, one of the most direct strategies for taking care of cellular aging. Write below which of these 3 foods you already consume and which one you're going to start including. I want to know. And tell me which state or city you're watching this video from, because this channel is reaching places I never imagined, and that matters a lot to me. If this video made sense to you, share it with someone who constantly complains about unexplained fatigue, low immunity, poor sleep, or constant inflammation. Because the root cause may be in the gut, and that person may not know it yet.